You're listening to 1055 The Colorado Sound, and remember, you can hear us around the world at coloradosound.org. My name's Ben. I am really excited to be joined by Jack Johnson. Now, he's got a new documentary called Surf Film Music coming out May 29th. The soundtrack comes out May 15th, and he also is playing Fiddler's Green here in Colorado 2 days in September, September 2nd and 3rd, with Lake Street Dive. We got a lot to talk about. So, Jack, thank you for being here.
Yeah, pleasure. Glad you had me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, let's talk a little bit about this documentary, specifically the soundtrack. I know you collaborated with Hermanos Gutierrez. What was it like working with them?
It's kind of a dream come true. It's like the only thing I've been playing around my house for like the last couple of years. And I can
They're
honestly tell you,
great.
oh, they're so great. And the first time I heard the music, I have a few friends that we're always like trading new bands with and stuff. And one of my friends that never fails me told me about it. So like when I put it on the very first time, I was intentionally listening, and it wasn't like it came on random. I was like, all right, my friend always is right. So let me hear listen. And as soon as it came on, the first thought I had, I honestly was like, oh, I want to play music with these guys. It just sounded like, I don't know, there was something I heard in it that just the rhythmic playing and sort of like the percussive playing on the guitar. I was like, I just want to sit around and play music with these guys. And sure enough, like a couple of years went by and we finally had a chance to meet. And it was kind of cool because they're a bit younger than me. And when I'd come through like Zurich and stuff where they'd grown up, they'd come to the shows and I didn't realize, but they had seen some of my shows when they were younger. And there was like a connection there. They really liked the surf films that I used to make. And so the idea of scoring this new film together, it was something they just jumped right into. And we had so much fun doing it. Now we've become really good friends. They're just, I feel almost the most lucky part of the whole thing is just I have two really good new friends I get to hang out with.
Well, so you mentioned your surf films. That is heavily featured in this documentary. Surf Film Music comes out May 29th. To talk a little bit about this documentary, I know it documents your journey as a surfer to a filmmaker to a musician, and I know your career and a lot of your creativity. It's been sparked by your relationship with G Love and Ben Harper. So I'd love to hear a little more about how would you describe your relationship with those guys?
They're like two older brothers in the music industry. You know what I mean? They really are. They're only a couple years older than me, but more is like their experience. They were both people who I listened to their music. Again, it's almost the same story. I heard their music for years before I ever had a chance to meet them in person. And I don't know, like when I got a chance to meet them and then play a little music together, I can honestly tell you, I was thinking like, oh, one day I'll tell my kids I got to jam with these guys. And then it just kept evolving where this natural thing happened where a friendship developed. And I was really lucky because like the first time I ever was on an album, it was on a G Love record. And so the experience in the studio is just so much fun because the way he records and the way he approaches everything is just always fun first and sort of about the friendships and the connections. So I kind of learned that from him. And then going on the road with Ben Harper, it was the same thing. It was like my blueprint for touring was just all about connection and sort of all the things that happen backstage and before the show during the day that kind of leads up to having a great show that night is really about the experiences you have that day. And so anyway, I just feel so lucky. They both kind of taught me sort of how to be on the road and how to record and those kind of things. And just really lucky because yeah, we're all still really good friends to this day.
Yeah, I had a chance to chat with G Love. It was only like a month or so ago, and going into it, I've seen a lot of interviews with him. I'm a big fan of his as well, and it's like, is he putting on a character? Is there a
Yeah, yeah,
little bit of acting involved? And
right.
he just felt very genuine. He's a very interesting cat to say the least.
He really is. I can tell you, like, there's been so many funny days where I don't know, like character to me is the way you act when nobody's looking, or like when,
Yeah.
especially somebody who is in the limelight sometimes and stuff. The He has these mornings where like he'll tell me like, okay, we're gonna go surf. We're on the East Coast. This is my territory. I'm gonna pick you up in the morning. So like I come down in the morning, like I got my coffee, and I'm like kind of thinking that he's gonna maybe we have a runner, or when you're on tour, everybody's always picking you up in like kind of like fancy runner cars and stuff. And I get down there, I have my coffee, and this car pulls up and I can't believe it's him. And he's got this car is barely running, and his friend's driving, and I have to like climb in through the window because the door doesn't work, and they got boards sticking out the windows. and we go spend a whole day, and it's just like I don't know. He's always so in the moment. And anyways, not to digress, but he's always a good time to hang with, Garrett.
Well, to stick to the G Love bandwagon, I guess you mentioned that you first got your opportunity on one of his albums, and I wanted to ask you about your song "Rodeo Clowns" because that was on his album Philadelphonic. It was on
Yeah.
your album On and On, and now you have recently remastered that demo for this Surf Film Music soundtrack. So, what is it about your song "Rodeo Clowns" that's so special to you? Because it's obviously an important song to you.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it's the first song I ever had that kind of like crossed over from just being a song that my friend group was hearing. And then maybe I kind of had these little 4-track recordings, and in the surf world, they started getting passed around. And so I had like a small fan base of maybe like 100 people, meaning that if I paddled out to certain lineups in Australia or Southern California or Hawaii, there were like teenage kids that kind of knew my music, and that was it because they had this little home recording. And then it was the first song that kind of crossed over where when I met G Love and we had a chance to go into the studio, and then it was on a real record. Um, so I kind of look at it as like this song that was the first one that kind of broke through for me on that level. But also, it was the first song I remember writing that I felt really confident. Everything before that was sort of like I was sort of workshopping it. Now when I listen back, I really love hearing the vulnerability and the music and everything from that era. But that was the first song where I felt like, hey, this might be a complete song. And it was right at this time when I met Garrett. I remember showing him the song, and he asked me, he's like, hey, play that song again. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. G Love likes my music, and he's like, play it again. And I didn't realize he wanted me to keep playing it because I think in his mind he was thinking I might actually invite this kid to come into the studio tomorrow. And it all just happened really quick. I just remember calling all my friends and being like, I'm going in a real studio, you guys, I can't believe it. And so anyways, that song to me, it's like when I hear that song, it just represents that time where it all, the little spark where it just started to begin.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm talking to Jack Johnson. He has a new documentary coming out called Surf Film Music that comes out May 29th. The soundtrack will be out May 15th. And by the way, he's also playing Fiddler's Green here in Colorado September 2nd and 3rd with Lake Street Dive. Do you have a history with Lake Street Dive?
Yeah, we've done a number of shows over the years. They're just a really fun band to play with live because backstage, again, they just love, we always have a little jam room backstage. We don't always sound check. Sometimes our band, like everybody's sort of like, hey, we're in New York, let's go experience New York for the day and skip out on sound check. But we got this little room we always set up where we can get together an hour before the show and we start coming up with ideas for the set and that kind of thing. And Lake Street Dive, they always come, they have a lot of members and stuff and horn players, and everybody kind of crumbs in the room, and we always just have these really fun jams. They're like a really musical band. I mean, all bands are musical, but they're like a band that just always wants to play music together. And so I have a lot of fun memories of these backstage jams. We're trying to fit more people that can actually fit in the room. They're usually these tiny little rooms, but like there's people like in the doorway leaning in for their horn part, and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, we've done a lot of shows over the years together, and I'm excited to do this whole little run.
Yeah, they have a hell of a lead singer. I mean,
Oh, yes.
I could listen to her sing the ABCs.
Yeah, I know. I
Just
know. So good.
uh, I actually do want to ask you. So I have a bit of a personal history with your music. I actually lived in Hawaii for several years, from like sixth to 10th grade. So I've seen you there a few times, but I really want to ask you about Bonnaroo 2013, which I was also there.
Oh, man.
If I remember correctly, you had a gig at the like Waffle House that Friday, and then you're headlining Bonnaroo the next
Yeah.
night, filling in for Mumford and Sons. Just
Yeah.
what describe that experience?
Well, the Waffle House is an exaggeration. It was what I did have was I was on the way to Europe for like a new record. We were going to do some press in Europe, and it worked out perfect. Where my good friends, the piano player in my band, Zach Gill, his other band is the Animal Liberation Orchestra, or ALO, and they had a late night gig. It was like 2 a.m. at Bonnaroo on a side stage, and so I thought, oh, this is perfect. I'll stop and I'll come to Bonnaroo, like break up the flight, and I'll just do this late night gig with my friends. We had a new record coming out, so we hadn't started rehearsing for that tour. Me and the band hadn't played together in a few years since the last tour. And as I was driving out to Bonnaroo, I got a call because somebody, from production heard that I was going to be there, sliding into this late night gig. and they said, hey, we have to figure out somebody to play the main stage last minute because Mumford and Sons is having to pull out for some health issues with one of the members. And so I was like, I called the band and I was like, you guys think we could do a gig tomorrow night on the main stage at Bonnaroo? Everybody was like, let's just do it. And it was pretty funny because we felt pretty confident. And then our hotel was a distance away where we could hear the stage the night before as everybody flew in and we were practicing. And we heard Paul McCartney just keep playing hit after hit. And then
So
Hey Jude came on. And we just kept thinking like, oh, we better keep rehearsing, guys.
I know you say your hotel's a distance away. I'll say everything's a distance away
Yeah.
because Bonner
Yeah.
is just out. I mean, it's literally out in the middle of
Right.
nowhere.
So much fun.
I have one more for you, Jack, and I ask this to every band or artist that I talk to. So I have to ask you. So the radio station is 105.5 The Colorado Sound. That's 105.5 FM. So what band or artist would you drive 105.5 miles to go see? And it can be any band or artist ever. It could be, I don't know, Beethoven. You just have to drive 105.5 miles to go see them.
I would drive 105.5 miles to go see a lot of different musicians. But I mean, the one that got me into music was Jimi Hendrix. You know, that would be
Great
if
answer.
I could bring Jimmy back and get to go see one of his shows. I'm sure that'd be a lot of people's answers, but that just happens to be the first cassette tape I ever went in and bought at a shop. The first band that I would put on with my little yellow Sony disc, or what do you call it, the little Walkman that had the auto flip, and I would go to sleep at night, and the thing would just keep flipping all night, and I would just sleep to Jimi Hendrix. And so that's the one that got me into music in the beginning.
It may be a lot of people's answers, but it's a lot of people's answers for a reason. It's Jimi freaking Hendrix we're talking about.
Right.
Jack Johnson, don't forget he has his new documentary, Surf Film Music, coming out May 29th. The soundtrack will be out May 15th. And he's playing with Lake Street Dive at Fiddler's Green September 2nd and 3rd. You can get those details at our concert calendar. Jack, I really appreciate you being here and good luck with everything.
Yeah, I hope to run into you when we're in town.
Yeah.
All right.